It is your June mortgage and real estate update. What a month it's been. So not exciting. It's Groundhog's Day. I swear this year is Groundhog's Day. So let's talk about what everybody cares about. Mortgage rates. Did the Fed lower? No, of course they didn't lower rates. Of course they didn't. It's the same thing that we've been hearing for what feels like forever. Well, we're making progress, but based on what we're seeing, we're going to continue to monitor data. Well, what that means is that if the Fed's monitoring data to see if they're going to raise or lower rates, the market's reacting every time a new piece of data comes. Because initially, people thought the Fed was going to do 3 cuts this year. We are already at the end of June and we have 0. And does anybody think July cut's going to happen? I don't. There's a lot of people who don't think it's going to happen. Then you start getting close to the election season. You know, would that be a great time for the Fed to cut rates? No. Right? You're going to have both political parties having views on it. The Fed's supposed to be independent. It's a mess. It's a nightmare. So I feel like the odds of the Fed cutting rates before the end of the year is getting slimmer and slimmer by the minute. So how am I approaching this? Well, we've been holding off for most of the year, waiting for the Fed to do one of these 3 cuts in order to refinance a lot of our clients. And at this point, we're looking at the numbers because, you know, in certain circumstances, it's like I was looking at a client scenario the other day and it was a VA loan and the rate was 1% lower and it was going to save them $500 a month. And in situations like that, it's like, do you keep on holding out hope for the Fed or do you take the money off the table now? Okay. And that was something that we were doing with no points, right? Like, would I suggest someone buys a bunch of mortgage points right now? No. But I feel like if there's the opportunity to take money off the table, you know, in certain circumstances, have it where the lender, you're getting a slightly higher rate, but your closing costs are paid for, you know, not in the loan, but actually paid for. I think that's interesting because it's taking money off the table, but it's preserving optionality for the future. You know, if you came to me and you said, Jen, I want to do a refi, I want to buy 2 points, I'd say, please don't, not with me. You're going to hate me, you're going to hate yourself, don't do it. But if right now you can refinance and you're going to save a decent amount of money and there's the opportunity for the lender to roll in the costs or it pays itself off pretty darn quick, I would say like under a year, I think that's interesting. So if you guys have questions about that, feel free to reach out. We'll have a calendar link for refinance questions. My team's not desperate for refinances, meaning we're not going to bullshit you. We're going to tell you, here's the math, this is what we would do, or we would wait. Wait may be the answer. But, you know, I think that in many circumstances, I'm just seeing scenarios where I'm like, let's take the money off the table. So that's a change from, you know, the Groundhog Day. That's one thing I've changed recently. In terms of buyers, what am I seeing? Well, buyers are generally happy right now because rates are lower than the highest they've been this year. Like, rates are pretty good right now. People seem pretty comfortable. Inventory in certain parts of the country is still an issue. There's other parts of the country where, you know, we're seeing builders have a hard time moving houses. But is that because of the market or is it because they put the prices so darn high it wasn't realistic, right? There's a lot of questions to that. And sometimes you'll see like an article and it'll be like, Redfin says listings are down, price cuts of 10%. And it's like, well, wait a second. That's assuming that the property was listed at a realistic price to begin with. And that's not always what happens. You know, people assume that what a house is listed at is what it's worth. But most of the time, what a house is listed at is what the seller wants to sell it at. You know, a real estate agent can provide comparable sales and be like, hey, Bob, it's worth 500. And Bob can go, I want 550, right? So if Bob ultimately cuts that house from 550 to 500, does it mean the market's crashing? No, it just means that he mispriced his house in the beginning. It's that simple. So, you know, the national articles I'd probably stay away from. It's market by market. You know, watch houses. If you see a house and you're like, wow, this is cutting their price a lot, ask your agent to pull comparable sales. What is that house actually worth? You know, and if they're looking at comparable sales and they're like, yeah, it's worth 500 and it's now 450, well, that would be a sign that the market's starting to crash. But I haven't seen that, you know. If I think about the housing crash, and I've said this in other videos, the only thing that makes me nervous right now is condos. And it's not all condos, but I live in Florida, and it's definitely getting harder and harder to finance condos that are older because of the rules that have come into play recently. So, you know, condos that are older, you definitely want to go in with your eyes wide open and pay attention to what's going around you, because if you see there's 10 buildings and all of a sudden all these units are for sale, it's probably because there's a big assessment coming. So caution on that. Beyond that, honestly, truly, it is Groundhog's Day. So I wish I had something more exciting to say to you. I wish I could tell you that I think the Fed's going to cut rates next month, but I don't. I don't, because the bottom line is inflation, although we're making progress, it's still a problem. You know, groceries are out of control. What Americans need on a daily basis is still too expensive. And is that inflation or corporate greed or a combination? Probably both, but in order to move forward and have lower rates, we have to see that ease. So I hope this video was helpful. Questions, comments, as always, reach out. I am here to support you on your home buying journey. Thanks for watching.